The howling wind carried the sound of breaking glass through Ethan Pierce's ranch house. But he did not move from his chair by the cold fireplace. Staring at the wedding ring he still wore 3 years after burying his wife. The winter of 1884 had arrived in Paradise, Nevada, with a vengeance, bringing with it the worst blizzard the territory had seen in decades. But Ethan felt nothing except the familiar emptiness that had become his constant companion, since consumption had stolen Sarah from his arms. He had been 28 when she died, leaving him alone on 2,000 acres of high desert rangeland that sat near the eastern edge of Nevada, where the land rose into mountains that caught winter storms coming down from the north. The ranch hands had all gone into town 3 days ago, when the sky turned that particular shade of gray that promised serious snow. But Ethan had stayed behind with his memories and his whiskey, preferring the company of ghosts to the hollow sympathy of neighbors who had long since given up trying to pull him back into the world of the living. The second crash brought him to his feet, hand instinctively reaching for the rifle that leaned against the stone hearth. Through the window he could see nothing but white, the snow falling so thick it created a solid wall between him and the barn 50 yards away. Something was out there, though, something that was not the wind or the storm. He pulled on his heavy coat and hat, wrapped a scarf around his face, and stepped out into the blinding fury of the blizzard. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath and making his eyes water instantly. He could barely see his own boots as he forced his way forward, following the porch rail until he reached the steps, then pushing into the open yard where the snow was already past his knees. The shape materialized out of the white like something from a fever dream. A horse, nearly dead on its feet, its head hanging low and ice crusting its mane. And slumped in the saddle, barely clinging to consciousness, was a woman. Ethan reached her in 3 strides, catching her as she began to slide sideways from the saddle. She was light in his arms, her clothes frozen stiff and her lips blue with cold. He could feel her shaking against him, her body trying desperately to generate heat it no longer had. Without thinking, he lifted her completely and began forcing his way back toward the house, trusting the horse to follow or not as it chose. Every step was a battle against the wind that seemed determined to push him backward, to bury them both in the endless white. He kicked the door open and stumbled inside, laying the woman on the rug in front of the fireplace, before turning back to secure the door against the storm. His hands were shaking as he finally got wood arranged in the hearth and a fire started, the flames catching and spreading until blessed heat began to fill the room. The woman had not moved, was not even shivering anymore, which he knew was a bad sign. He had seen men freeze to death in winter storms before, had learned to recognize the stages that led from cold to death. She was too far along that path, her body shutting down piece by piece. Ethan did not let himself think about propriety or hesitation. He pulled off her frozen coat, working quickly to remove the layers of soaked clothing until she lay in just her undergarments. He grabbed every blanket he could find, wrapping her tightly and pulling her closer to the fire. Then he stripped off his own wet coat and boots, climbed under the blankets with her, and pulled her against his chest, trying to transfer his body heat to her freezing skin. She was like ice in his arms, so cold it almost hurt to hold her, but he did not let go. He rubbed her back and arms, talking to her even though she gave no sign of hearing. "Come on now, do not quit on me. You did not ride through that storm just to die in my house. Wake up. You hear me? Wake up and tell me your name." Time became strange as he held her there, the storm raging outside and the fire crackling beside them. Gradually, impossibly, he felt warmth beginning to return to her skin. The dangerous stillness gave way to shivering, violent tremors that shook her whole body. He held her through it, keeping her wrapped tight, whispering encouragement he had not known he still possessed. Her eyes opened once, unfocused and confused before sliding shut again. But she was breathing and she was warming, and that was enough. When she finally woke fully, it was dark outside and the storm was still howling. Ethan had moved to the chair, giving her space and privacy, building up the fire until the room was almost too warm. He had made coffee and heated some stew, and he sat watching her with the careful attention of a man who had grown accustomed to being alone. Her eyes, when they opened and focused on him, were the color of spring grass, startlingly green in a face that was still too pale but no longer held the waxy sheen of someone dancing with death. "Where am I?" Her voice was hoarse, barely more than a whisper. "My ranch, about 15 miles north of Paradise. You rode in during the storm. Do you remember that?" She tried to sit up, realized she was wearing only her undergarments under the blankets, and clutched them tighter around herself. A flush of color came to her cheeks, the first real sign of life he had seen in her. "My clothes were frozen solid. They are drying by the fire in the kitchen. I will get you something of mine to wear." He stood, grateful for the excuse to leave the room, and returned with one of his shirts and a pair of trousers that would be far too big but would at least be warm and dry. He turned his back while she dressed, staring out the window at the wall of white beyond the glass. "Thank you." The words were quiet but sincere. "I thought I was going to die out there. I could not see anything, could not feel my hands on the reins. The horse just kept walking, and then there was your house. What were you doing out in a storm like this?" He turned back to face her, taking in the details he had missed before. She was young, probably 24 or 25, with dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders and features that would be beautiful when they were not pinched with exhaustion and lingering cold. There was something refined about her, a quality that spoke of education and means, which made her presence in the middle of a Nevada blizzard even more puzzling. "Running." She met his eyes directly, and he saw steel beneath the exhaustion. "My stagecoach was attacked 2 days ago, about 20 miles south of here. Bandits. They killed the driver and the guard, took everything of value. I managed to get away on one of the horses while they were distracted with their plunder. I have been riding ever since, trying to reach Paradise, but then the storm hit and I could not see the road anymore." Ethan absorbed this information, his jaw tightening. The territory had always had its share of outlaws, men who preyed on travelers and stage coaches, but it had been getting worse lately as the mines played out, and desperation drove more people to violence. "You were lucky. Most people caught out in a blizzard like this do not make it. That horse of yours must have good instincts to find this place. Is the horse alive?" She asked the question with genuine concern. "I brought him into the barn after I got you settled. He is cold and tired, but he will recover. Tough animal." He poured coffee into a tin cup and handed it to her, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. The contact sent an unexpected jolt through him, something he had not felt in so long he had almost forgotten what it was. He pulled his hand back quickly, disturbed by his own reaction. She wrapped both hands around the cup, breathing in the steam. "I am Victoria Walsh. I was traveling from San Francisco to meet my brother in Silver Peak. He has a mining claim there. Wrote to me 6 months ago saying he had finally struck something worthwhile and wanted me to come help him manage the business side of things. I am a bookkeeper by training, or was, before I decided to come west." She took a sip of the coffee, closing her eyes briefly in appreciation. "This is the best thing I have ever tasted. Ethan Pierce. This is my ranch, has been in my family for 15 years. We run cattle, mostly some horses. It is a hard living, but it is honest work." He found himself giving more information than he had intended, something about her direct gaze and straightforward manner making him want to fill the silence. "The storm should blow itself out in another day or two. Once it is safe to travel, I will take you into paradise. You can send word to your brother from there and wait for him to come get you, or catch another stage if you prefer. I do not want to impose on you any longer than necessary," Victoria said, but there was no real force behind the words. She was exhausted, running on the last reserves of strength and will, and they both knew it. "You are not imposing. The storm makes it impossible to do much work anyway. I have supplies enough for two and room enough that you can have privacy. It is settled." He said it firmly, in a tone that did not invite argument, and after a moment she nodded. The next 2 days passed in a strange kind of suspended time. The storm continued to rage outside, piling snow against the walls of the house, and making it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction. Inside, Ethan and Victoria moved around each other carefully, like two wild animals sharing a den out of necessity rather than choice. He was not accustomed to having anyone in his space anymore, had grown used to the silence and solitude that had defined his life since Sarah died. But Victoria did not push, did not try to fill every silence with chatter or force him to engage when he clearly wanted to be left alone. Instead, she made herself quietly useful. She cooked meals from the supplies in his pantry, simple but well-prepared food that tasted better than anything he had made for himself in months. She mended a shirt of his that had been missing buttons for half a year. She sat by the fire in the evenings and read from the books on his shelves, asking permission first, but clearly hungry for something to occupy her mind. And sometimes, when she thought he was not looking, he would catch her watching him with an expression that was part curiosity, part wariness, and part something else he could not quite name. On the third day, the storm finally began to ease. The wind died down to occasional gusts, and the snow tapered off to light flurries. Ethan went out to check on the animals, finding that the barn had held up well despite the fury of the blizzard. The horses were restless from being cooped up but otherwise healthy. Victoria's mount, a bay gelding with good lines and an intelligent eye, nickered at him when he entered the stall. "You saved her life, you know," Ethan told the horse, running a hand down its neck. "Brought her right to my door when she could not see her own hand in front of her face. That is good work." When he returned to the house, he found Victoria standing at the window, looking out at the transformed landscape. Everything was white, pristine and untouched, the familiar contours of his ranch buried under several feet of snow. The sky was clearing to the west, patches of blue showing through the breaking clouds. "It is beautiful," she said softly as he came to stand beside her. "I have never seen so much snow. In San Francisco we had rain, sometimes fog, but nothing like this." "It is beautiful now," Ethan agreed. "In a few days, when I am digging paths to every building and hauling extra feed to the stock, I will find it less charming. But yes, right now it is something to see." He was acutely aware of her standing close to him, could smell the faint scent of the soap she had used when she bathed earlier. It made him think of Sarah, not because Victoria was anything like his dead wife, but because it reminded him of what it felt like to share space with a woman, to be conscious of another person in a way that was both careful and intimate. "Tell me about her," Victoria said suddenly, turning to look at him directly. "Your wife. I have seen you looking at that ring you wear. I have seen the way you keep this house like a shrine to someone who is not here anymore. What was her name?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. No one had asked about Sarah in over a year, everyone in paradise having learned that the subject was forbidden territory. But Victoria was a stranger, did not know the rules he had built around his grief. "Sarah," he said finally, the name feeling strange in his mouth after so long. Her name was Sarah Pierce. Before she married me, it was Sarah Caldwell. She died 3 years ago, consumption. I watched her waste away over 6 months and could not do anything to save her. We had been married for 2 years. I am sorry." Victoria's voice was gentle, sincere. That must have been unbearable. It was. The admission came easier than he expected. I loved her more than I thought it was possible to love another person. When she died, something in me died too. I stopped caring about much of anything. I keep the ranch running because that is what you do, not because it matters. I stopped going to town except when necessary. I stopped believing that life had anything good left to offer. It sounds dramatic when I say it out loud, but it is the truth. Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her green eyes thoughtful. "My mother died when I was 16, she said finally. "My father followed her a year later. The doctor said it was his heart, but I always thought he just could not bear to live without her. They had that kind of love, the kind that seems to defy reason. I used to think it was romantic. Now I wonder if it is a blessing or a curse to love someone so much that losing them destroys you." "Both," Ethan said simply. "It is both." The conversation marked a shift between them. Over the next few days, as the snow continued to settle, and Ethan began the work of digging out, they talked more freely. Victoria told him about her life in San Francisco, working as a bookkeeper for a shipping company, living in a small apartment near the docks. She painted a picture of a life that was respectable but confining, hemmed in by propriety and expectation. Coming west had been her bid for something more, a chance to build something meaningful with her brother, to have a stake in something that mattered. Ethan, in turn, found himself talking about the ranch, about what it had been like to build something out of nothing in Nevada territory. His father had claimed the land in 1869, right after the Transcontinental Railroad made the West more accessible. They had started with 100 head of cattle and a dream, had worked brutal hours to break the land and build the herd. His father died in a riding accident in 1880, leaving everything to Ethan. He and Sarah had moved into the main house, had planned to fill it with children and laughter. None of that had come to pass. "What will you do now?" Ethan asked one evening as they sat by the fire. A week had passed since Victoria arrived, and the trails were finally clear enough that travel was possible. "Will you still try to reach your brother in Silver Peak?" Victoria was quiet, staring into the flames. "I do not know," she admitted. "The truth is, I am not sure the mining claim is real. James has always been full of grand schemes, always certain the next thing will be his big break. Most of them have fallen through. I came west partly because he asked, but mostly because I wanted to believe in something, wanted to feel like my life was going somewhere instead of just running in place." She looked up at Ethan, her expression vulnerable. "Does that make me foolish?" "No," he said firmly. "It makes you human. We all want to believe our lives mean something, that we are building towards something better. I lost sight of that for a while, but I remember what it feels like." "What changed?" she asked softly. He held her gaze, feeling the weight of the question. "You did," he said simply. "Showing up half frozen on my doorstep in the middle of the worst storm in years. Sitting in my house for a week, being alive and real when everything around me has felt dead for so long. I am not saying I am fixed or healed or any of that. But I am starting to remember what it feels like to care about something besides just getting through another day." Victoria reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. Her fingers were warm and strong, and Ethan found himself holding on like she was an anchor in a storm. "I care about you," she said quietly. I know it is too soon, that we barely know each other, but there is something here, Ethan. I feel it, and I think you do too. I am not asking you to forget your wife or stop loving her memory. I am just asking if you might have room in your life for something new." Ethan looked down at their joined hands, then at the ring he still wore on his other hand. Sarah had told him, in those final weeks when they both knew she was dying, that she did not want him to spend the rest of his life alone. She had made him promise to find happiness again, to let someone else in when he was ready. At the time, he had promised because it was what she needed to hear, never believing he would actually be able to keep that promise. But now, sitting here with Victoria's hand in his, he felt the first stirrings of something that might eventually become hope. "I am afraid," he admitted. "Afraid of caring about someone again, of risking that kind of pain. Afraid that I will fail you the way I feel like I failed Sarah, even though I know that is not rational. Afraid that I am being disloyal to her memory by even considering this." "She would want you to be happy," Victoria said with certainty. "I never met her, but I know that if she loved you the way you loved her, she would want you to live, really live, not just exist." He brought her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles. The gesture felt momentous, like a door opening after being locked for years. "Stay," he said, the word almost a plea. "Not as a guest, not as someone passing through. Stay here and give us a chance to see what this might become. I have a big house and a working ranch and enough money to support a family. What I do not have is a reason to care about any of it. You could be that reason, Victoria. If you are willing to take a chance on a broken-down widower who has forgotten how to do anything but grieve." Victoria's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "I will stay," she said, "on one condition. Stop calling yourself broken down. You are not broken, Ethan Pierce. You are healing, and that is something entirely different." The kiss, when it came, was tentative at first, both of them testing uncertain ground. But then Victoria leaned into him and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, and it became something more. Something that tasted of second chances and unexpected grace. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I do not know how to do this," he confessed. "How to start over. How to love someone new without betraying the past. We will figure it out together," Victoria promised. "One day at a time." Spring came to Paradise slowly, the snow melting inch by reluctant inch as the days grew longer and the sun climbed higher in the sky. Ethan and Victoria settled into a life together, learning each other's rhythms and habits. She proved to be as capable as she was intelligent, taking over the ranch books and finding inefficiencies that had been costing him money for years. Under her management, the operation became more profitable, more streamlined. But more than that, she brought life back to the house. She planted a garden near the kitchen door. She sewed curtains for the windows. She filled the rooms with her presence until the shrine-like quality gradually faded, replaced by something warmer and more alive. They were married in late April at the small church in Paradise, with half the town in attendance. Ethan wore a new suit that Victoria had ordered from a catalog, and she wore a simple cream-colored dress that made her look radiant. When the preacher asked if he took Victoria to be his lawfully wedded wife, Ethan looked into her green eyes and said, "I do," with more conviction than he had brought to anything in years. And when he slipped the ring onto her finger, he also removed the one he had been wearing for 3 years, transferring it to his right hand. Sarah would always be part of his history, but Victoria was his future. The ranch thrived under their combined efforts. Ethan found himself working with renewed purpose, getting up each morning eager to face the day instead of dreading it. Victoria's brother James eventually showed up in Paradise, his mining claim having indeed been a bust, and Ethan hired him on as a ranch hand. James proved to be a hard worker when he had proper direction, and having family nearby made Victoria happy, which in turn made Ethan happy. In the winter of 1885, almost exactly a year after Victoria had ridden into his life on the back of that bay gelding, she told him she was pregnant. Ethan felt fear and joy warring in his chest, memories of Sarah's death making him terrified of losing Victoria the same way. But she took his face in her hands and made him look at her. "I am not her," she said firmly. "I am strong and healthy, and I am going to be fine. We are going to have this baby and raise it together and be happy. Do you hear me? I need you to believe that." He believed, or at least he tried to, and when their son was born in July of 1886, healthy and squalling and perfect, Ethan felt something he had thought was dead forever come roaring back to life. They named the boy Thomas, after Victoria's father, and Ethan held him with shaking hands, marveling at the tiny fingers and the way the baby's eyes seemed to look right into him. "Hello, son," he whispered. "Your mother and I are going to do everything we can to give you a good life." Victoria, exhausted but glowing, reached out to touch Ethan's arm. "We already are," she said softly. 2 years later they had a daughter, Eleanor, who had her mother's green eyes and her father's stubborn determination. The house that had been so silent for so long rang with children's laughter and the chaos of family life. Ethan built additions as they needed them, expanding the ranch house until it sprawled across the hillside, rooms added one at a time as their family and their dreams grew. On a cold December evening in 1890, 6 years after Victoria had arrived in his life, Ethan stood on the porch watching the first snow of the season begin to fall. Thomas was 5 now, running through the house with the energy of youth, and Eleanor was a toddler taking uncertain steps and falling down with delighted giggles. Inside, he could hear Victoria singing as she prepared dinner, her voice clear and sweet. The ring he wore on his right hand caught the light, a reminder of the love he had lost, but no longer a weight dragging him down. Instead, it was a bridge between past and present, proof that the human heart was capable of holding both grief and joy without being destroyed by either. Victoria came out to join him, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders against the cold. She slipped her hand into his, standing close. "Do you remember the night I arrived?" she asked, watching the snow begin to accumulate on the yard. "Every detail," Ethan said. "The sound of your horse in the storm, how cold you were when I carried you inside, the way I thought you might not make it." He turned to look at her, this woman who had changed everything. "I think about what my life would be like if you had not found this place. If that horse had taken a different direction, or if I had decided to ride out the storm in town with everyone else, I would have missed all of this, all of you. But I did find you," Victoria said simply. "And you saved my life, and I like to think I saved yours a little bit too. Everything that came before led to this moment, right here. We are exactly where we are supposed to be." Ethan pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her and resting his chin on top of her head. Behind them, through the window, he could see Thomas playing with carved wooden horses Ethan had made for him, and Eleanor toddling after her brother with determination. His family, his life, his second chance at happiness that he had never thought he would find. "I love you," he said into Victoria's hair. "I spent 3 years believing I would never say those words to anyone again. I was wrong about a lot of things, but mostly I was wrong about believing my capacity for love had died with Sarah. It did not die. It was just sleeping, waiting for the right person to wake it up again." Victoria turned in his arms to face him, reaching up to touch his cheek. "I love you too," she said. "And I am grateful every single day that the storm brought me to your door. You gave me a home, a family, a purpose. You gave me everything I did not even know I was looking for." They stood there together as the snow continued to fall, coating the world in white the way it had that first night. But this time there was no desperation, no fear, no desperate struggle for survival. There was only peace and love, and the deep satisfaction of knowing they had found each other against all odds and built something beautiful from the ashes of loss. The years continued to pass, each one adding its own layers to their life together. They had one more child, a son they named William, born in 1892. The ranch prospered, becoming known throughout the territory for the quality of its cattle and horses. Thomas grew into a responsible young man who loved the land as much as his father did. Eleanor developed a talent for drawing, filling sketchbooks with images of the Nevada landscape. William was the charmer, the one who could talk his way out of any trouble and make everyone around him smile. James eventually married a widow from Paradise named Martha, and they built a house on the southern edge of Ethan's property. The families remained close, sharing holidays and helping each other through the inevitable challenges of ranching life. When James and Martha had children of their own, the cousins grew up together, running wild across the high desert rangeland and learning the skills they would need to thrive in the harsh but beautiful territory. On Ethan's 40th birthday in 1896, Victoria organized a celebration that brought together everyone from Paradise and the surrounding ranches. The house was packed with people, the tables groaning under the weight of food, and the air filled with laughter and music. At one point in the evening, Ethan found himself standing slightly apart from the crowd, just watching his children play with their friends, watching Victoria move through the room, making sure everyone was comfortable and happy. Watching the life they had built together unfold before him like a gift he still could not quite believe he deserved. His old friend Henry Collins, who owned the neighboring ranch, came to stand beside him. "You look like a man who has everything he wants," Henry observed. "I am," Ethan admitted. "For a long time I thought my life was over. I went through the motions, but there was no real living in it. Victoria changed that. She changed everything." "It was a lucky day when that blizzard brought her to your door," Henry agreed, "though I suppose some people would say it was not luck at all. Maybe it was meant to be, you know. Sometimes the universe has a way of putting people exactly where they need to be." Ethan thought about that later, after the guests had gone home and the house had settled into quiet. He and Victoria sat on the porch despite the chill in the air, wrapped in blankets and watching the stars emerge in the clear Nevada sky. "Do you think it was fate?" he asked, continuing the conversation he had been having with Henry. "That night you arrived. Do you think we were meant to find each other?" Victoria considered the question seriously. "I think we made choices that led us to each other," she said finally. "You chose to stay at the ranch during the storm. I chose to run from those bandits instead of surrendering. The horse chose to follow his instincts to find shelter. Each choice created the opportunity for the next one, until all the pieces came together in exactly the right way. Fate or choice, does it really matter? The result is the same. We found each other and we chose to hold on." "I am glad we did," Ethan said quietly. "More glad than I have words to express." "Show me instead," Victoria suggested, her eyes sparkling with mischief and love. So he did, kissing her there under the stars with all the passion of a man who had been given a second chance at life and intended to make the most of every single moment. The years continued their steady march. Thomas took over more and more of the ranch operations as Ethan grew older, showing the same dedication and skill his father had. Eleanor married a banker from Carson City and moved away, though she visited often with her own growing family. William went to college in San Francisco, studying business, but always came home for the summers to work the ranch and reconnect with his roots. Through it all, Ethan and Victoria remained each other's anchor and compass. They had arguments, as all couples do, moments of frustration or miscommunication. But they never lost sight of what mattered, never let pride or anger drive wedges between them. They had both known loss, both understood how fragile life could be, and that knowledge made them appreciate what they had all the more. In 1910, on a spring morning full of sunshine and birdsong, Ethan and Victoria celebrated their 26th wedding anniversary. They were in their 50s now, their hair touched with gray, and their faces marked with lines earned through years of laughter and hard work and life fully lived. They rode out to a favorite spot on the ranch, a high meadow that overlooked miles of rolling rangeland, and spread out a blanket for a picnic lunch. 26 years, Victoria marveled, leaning back against Ethan's chest as they sat together. Sometimes it feels like yesterday that I rode up to your house in that blizzard. Other times it feels like we have been together forever. Both are true, Ethan said, wrapping his arms around her. I remember everything about that night so clearly. I remember thinking you were going to die and feeling this unexpected desperation about it. I did not even know you, but I could not let that happen. I had to save you. You did save me, Victoria said. And I saved you right back. We saved each other, really. That is what love is supposed to do, I think. Not complete each other like we were incomplete before, but save each other from loneliness and despair. Remind each other that life is worth living, even when it is hard. Ethan pressed a kiss to the top of her head, breathing in the familiar scent of her. After all these years, she still made his heart beat faster, still made him grateful for every day they had together. I never stopped loving Sarah, he said quietly, voicing something they rarely spoke about directly. But I learned that the heart is bigger than we think. It has room for more than one great love, room to honor the past while embracing the present. You never asked me to forget her, never made me choose. That meant everything, Victoria. It made it possible for me to love you without guilt, to give you all of myself without reservation. I know you loved her, Victoria said. I know you always will in a way. But the love you have for me is different, built on different foundations, and it does not diminish what you had before. I made my peace with that a long time ago. Your capacity to love deeply, to remain faithful to memory while still opening your heart to new possibilities, is part of what I love most about you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching hawks circle in the distance and listening to the wind move through the grass. After a while, Victoria spoke again. I want you to know that coming west was the best decision I ever made. Even with the bandits and the storm and thinking I was going to freeze to death, I would do it all again in a heartbeat if it meant ending up here with you. You gave me a life beyond anything I dreamed was possible. You gave me a family, a home, a purpose. You gave me love that has sustained me through everything. I could not have asked for more. The feeling is mutual, Ethan assured her. You brought me back to life, Victoria. You made me believe in second chances and new beginnings. You filled my house with laughter and my days with meaning. Everything good in my life for the past 26 years has been because of you. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink and purple, they packed up their picnic and rode slowly back to the ranch house. The buildings had been expanded and improved over the years, but the core remained the same. The house where Victoria had nearly died and then slowly come back to life. The barn where her horse had found shelter from the storm. The land that had witnessed their courtship, their marriage, their years of partnership and devotion. Their children and grandchildren were coming for dinner that evening. 3 generations gathering around the table to celebrate family and love, and the bonds that held them all together. As Ethan helped Victoria down from her horse and they walked hand in hand toward the house, he felt a profound sense of contentment. His life had not been easy, had held more than its share of pain and loss. But it had also held moments of transcendent joy, and this was one of them. Inside, the house was already filling with noise and activity. Thomas had arrived early with his wife and 4 children. Alina had driven up from Carson City with her banker husband and their 3 boys. William was there with his new wife, a smart, capable woman who reminded Ethan strongly of Victoria at that age. James and Martha and their grown children completed the gathering, everyone talking at once in the cheerful chaos of family. Victoria immediately dove into the preparations, directing traffic in the kitchen with the ease of long practice. Ethan found himself surrounded by grandchildren demanding stories, or asking to be lifted up, or showing him treasures they had found outside. He obliged them all, feeling his heart swell with gratitude for the abundance of life and love that filled his home. During dinner, Thomas stood and raised his glass. "I want to propose a toast," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded table. "To my parents, who showed all of us what real love looks like. Not the easy kind that exists only in good times, but the kind that persists through loss and hardship and doubt. The kind that saves and sustains and makes everything worthwhile. Thank you for building this family, this home, this legacy. We are all better people because of your example." Everyone raised their glasses, echoing the sentiment, and Ethan had to blink back unexpected tears. He looked at Victoria across the table and saw his own emotion reflected in her face. They had done this together, had built something that would outlast them both. Their children would carry on the ranch and the values they had instilled. Their grandchildren would grow up knowing what it meant to love deeply and work hard and find meaning in the everyday moments of life. Late that night, after everyone had finally gone home or settled into guest rooms, Ethan and Victoria stood once again on the porch. It had become their ritual over the years, this quiet time together under the stars. Victoria leaned against him, and Ethan wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. "This is what I wanted," Victoria said softly. "All those years ago when I left San Francisco, I was looking for a life that mattered, a place where I belonged. I found that here with you. Every day has been a gift, Ethan. Every single day." "I know exactly what you mean," Ethan replied. "I spent 3 years thinking my life was over, that I had nothing left worth living for. Then you rode out of that blizzard and proved me wrong in the best possible way. You gave me a reason to wake up in the morning, a reason to care about the future. You gave me everything, Victoria, everything that matters." They stood there together as they had so many times before. 2 people who had found each other against all odds and built a life of meaning and purpose and deep, abiding love. The Nevada sky stretched endlessly above them, the same sky that had unleashed the blizzard that brought them together all those years ago. That storm had seemed like an ending at the time, a final cruel blow in a life already marked by loss. Instead, it had been a beginning, the start of a story neither of them could have predicted, but both were grateful beyond measure to have lived. Ethan thought about the man he had been that night, sitting alone in the dark with his grief and his whiskey, convinced that nothing good remained in the world. That man had been so lost, so certain that love was something that happened once and never again. How wrong he had been. How grateful he was to have been proven wrong. "I love you," he told Victoria, the words as true now as they had been the first time he said them. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after that for as long as we both live. You are my second chance, my unexpected blessing, my proof that life always has more to offer if we are brave enough to remain open to possibility. "And I love you," Victoria replied, turning in his arms to kiss him softly. "You are my home, my partner, my greatest adventure. Thank you for taking a chance on a half-frozen woman who showed up on your doorstep in the middle of a blizzard. Thank you for saving my life and letting me save yours. Thank you for every day we have had together and every day still to come." They went inside finally, closing the door against the cool night air, and the house settled around them with the comfortable creaks and sighs of a structure that had sheltered decades of life and love. In the bedroom they had shared for 26 years, they held each other close, two hearts beating in comfortable synchronization. Two lives woven so tightly together it was impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Outside, the stars continued their eternal dance across the Nevada sky, indifferent witnesses to the small human dramas that played out beneath them. But for Ethan and Victoria, those dramas were everything. They were the substance of life itself, the moments of connection and grace that transformed existence from mere survival into something transcendent. The widowed cowboy who had stopped believing in love had been given a second chance, delivered to his doorstep in a blizzard by a woman brave enough to run toward an uncertain future rather than surrender to fate. Together, they had proven that the human heart is more resilient than we give it credit for, capable of healing and growing and learning to love again, even after the deepest wounds. Their story was a testament to the power of hope, the importance of remaining open to possibility, and the extraordinary things that can happen when two people choose to hold on to each other through whatever storms life might bring. As they drifted off to sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, both Ethan and Victoria carried the same thought. Of all the paths they might have taken, all the choices they might have made, this was the one that mattered. This life they had built together, this family they had raised, this love that had sustained them through everything. It was more than enough. It was everything. And they were grateful beyond words for every single moment they had been given to share it together.